Hi, everyone. I'm Don Rooney.
And I'm John Timpane.
Welcome to the musical Innertube, the podcast born out of a mistake.
We once meant to introduce a soothing musical interlude, but we said soothing musical Innertube, and the name stuck.
On this podcast, we talk to interesting people about their interesting lives, jobs, hobbies, and passions.
Difference makers who really make a difference. Today on the musical Innertube, we are happy and honored to have John C. Austin. He's a non-resident senior fellow with the Brookings Institute, the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, and the Brookings Institute, where he's deeply involved in efforts to support economic transformation in the Midwest. He also lectures on the economy at the University of Michigan. John will be talking with us today about common sense and publicly popular ways to fix our immigration system. Welcome, John.
Good to be with you and your listeners.
John, we invited you after we read a February 2023 article you wrote with Steve Tabachman. It was titled 7 Things That Would Fix Immigration in the U.S. And as you know, even as we speak, immigration is under debate, as it has been for years in Congress. And I'm wondering if you've been following that debate, and if so, what your thoughts are about what's happening right now.
Well, I think right now, unfortunately, the debate is very little, at least on the Republican side, about actually solving the problem, and it's degenerated into a effort to basically play political gotcha with the Democrats and keep using immigration and whipping up fears of immigrants overrunning the country to hang around Democrats' necks as a problem that they are responsible for in some way. So it's too bad it's gotten to this point. It makes, the kind of common sense, needed, helpful immigration policy that we certainly need and want to continue to promote and articulate and try to help develop harder than ever. But it doesn't mean it's not worth it, because as I can hopefully give you a sense of the history, I got into the business of welcoming immigrants to this country, and particularly the Midwest, where I'm home, because it's one of the most potent forces for economic renewal, revival, and regeneration of our country and our ability to compete in the world as any single thing.
Is it the case that we are prisoners of our own demagoguery at this point? This has been going on for a long time. We were hearing about a broken immigration system back in the 90s, at least. I know it's been for far longer than that, but it does seem as though what you've just said about the positive side of immigration doesn't get much of the airplay.
Well, I think, as recently as, 15 years ago, we had John McCain, Republican senator, Marco Rubio, and others eager to work with Democrats in Congress, and I think then President Obama, and maybe even prior under President Bush, who were eager to develop, and Ronald Reagan before that, a helpful embrace of immigrants in an orderly and systematic way that continues the flow of new blood, new ideas, new talents, new creative geniuses to this country, which has always been the source of our greatest strength as an economy and as a polity. Any place that the best and brightest and all people in the world want to seek out to find a better life and to enjoy our freedoms, that's a pretty good destination, and it's our home, and we should embrace it. So it was 15 years ago. There was, again, some of the trying to come together with some of the kind of thoughtful policies, a path to citizenship for those who have been here, paying taxes and making a living and contributing to our society for some years. A way to treat the dreamers, those who were born in America, but the children of immigrants, very much a legitimate claim on our citizenship as any of the rest of us who are all children of immigrants or folks who were brought here in the. It really has, with Donald Trump in particular, he began to use immigration and whipping up fears of immigrants in a way that is consistent, unfortunately, with what some of the kind of right-wing populists around the world have tried to use a scapegoat whether it's out of touch urban woke elites or immigrants, or in our country, people of color, as somehow responsible for folks, working class folks, particularly working class whites, who may be anxious about a changing economy, a changing demography, changing, worried about their place in the world, saying those folks, those immigrants are coming here and they're getting something at your expense and they're getting special treatment. And it's really a product of this looking for right-wing populists blame a scapegoat and tell people you're getting screwed by somebody else, and they name who it is. And that just then, even if immigrants on balance are a positive net contributor to creating jobs and creating jobs for people that live here, and growing higher wages and a more robust economy for people that are here. So that's the root challenge of the moment, not just here, but in other countries. You see it in Europe, where right-wing folks whip the fear, right-wing nationalists, white nationalists largely, say you're losing your place in society. You're threatened by these people who are somehow being advantaged and being allowed to be citizens, and you're losing your place in society. And that, has nothing to do with people, the economics. Immigrants are a contributor to economic growth. It's all about identity and whipping up fears of the other, whoever that is, using that to try to take down or diminish support for politicians of the other party, saying they're somehow responsible for letting these people take advantage or take what's yours.
Yeah, it has never been clear to me why immigration stirs up such passion among some people, but there is a threat, and it goes way back in history. I mean, John and I are both of Irish descent, so I can tell you that I know my ancestors were not welcome necessarily when they came to America. Back in the 1800s, there was always no Irish allowed, no Irish to be hired, that sort of thing. And yet, immigrants, you're right, have contributed to the productivity and the economy of this country from the very beginning. We have people like Westinghouse and Carnegie, people from over in Europe, obviously, that have built the economy of this country. And does it matter now that these people are coming from Hispanic countries?
Yeah, it very much does. And, I'm in Michigan, and I'm in the sort of industrial Midwest. A lot of people who had a decent paying blue collar job in the factories, et cetera, those have gone or restructured, meaning you've got to have a higher education or technical training to program the robot, and we need more of those. There are good paying jobs here, even, but with those jobs disappearing, it makes folks anxious about their place. Now, I try to remind people, and we did some good reports about Michigan, the benefits of immigrants always here to our economy and our growth. But, the immigrants that first developed Michigan and worked in these great industries and even built these great industries that gave so much wealth, they were the Dutch and they were the Germans and they were the folks from Ireland and Western and Southern Europe, and the Italians and the Finns who went mining in the UP. And so today's immigrants are coming here for the same reasons. They're looking for a better life. They're looking for opportunity. And they're looking to bring their talents. And in Michigan and Ohio and other Midwest, former Rust Belt states, our immigrants are actually better educated than the people that grew up here. I mean, they're more likely to have an engineering degree or be a nurse or an IT professional, but they are people of color. They're the Pakistani doctor. They're the Iraqi tech person. They're the Salvadoran roofer or laborer who's coming here. And so it's easier to fan fears of the other, someone who, when they don't look like you, when you can say, you can cast them alongside the, unfortunate fierce racism that's always existed in our country, where Black people and people from African American descent were treated horribly and made second-class citizens. So it's a little easier, back in the day, as you were saying, Don, the Irish were second or if not third-class citizens here. But then fast forward, Irish are accepted as all American as apple pie, as are the Italians, as are, the Poles. But
the Irish are the cops right now. I mean, that's the stereotype for Irish, is that they're policemen.
Right. And that took some time but it was also easier in a sense because they're folks of white or Northern Europe, European descent. And today's immigrants are from Latin and South America and East Asia and Asia. And so it makes it unfortunately easier to paint them as the other and to whip up fear. But there's good evidence that when you do have immigrants come into your community, like I'll pick one example, Troy, Michigan is a thriving community north of Detroit. It's a suburban community. It's got the highest share of non-native born of any place in Michigan. 25% of the people are there. And it's a great schools, great destination. Immigrants flock there as they always do. They're looking for the same things: a good school for my kids, a nice neighborhood, a community, a safe community. And so, Troy's got the white people in Troy and around Troy have no problem with immigrants because they're their neighbors and they know them. It's people in Macomb County outside Detroit where there are no immigrants who are the Trump backers who are encouraged to fear that immigrants are overrunning us, even though there aren't any in their community, and that they're somehow going to take a job that they don't have, which is nonsense.
So, John, let's go through your laundry list because I think it's a fascinating one, and I'd love to hear your comments as we do these 7 items. There's probably a few more in the background, but these are the 7 things that you determined that have really pretty broad support on both sides of the economic ledger. Not everybody supports them, but when polls are run, most people say, yeah, that would be common sense. So it starts off with a path to citizenship for immigrants who are already here. And now most of our listeners, I think, would say, well, isn't there one now? And what's the difference between what exists now and what you are proposing?
Well, and then just a bit of context, if I can, before we go into the specifics of the reforms of the moment. My co-author on this report, Steve Tabachman, and I, first got into this kind of business of let's try to encourage immigrant welcoming policies, when we were looking at the economy of Michigan and the Midwest. And we're seeing that for communities that had lost some of their young talent, that were, had lost some of their traditional employers, immigrants were the one major source of new population growth because they'll keep coming because it's the land of opportunity. And they're also disproportionately the ones to start a business, be the tech entrepreneur, employ other people, open the shop on Main Street, put other people to work. So we got into this to say, let's welcome more immigrants because they drive new businesses, new startups, new entrepreneurial activity, repopulate communities that have lost some populations, whether it's Flint or Detroit and other communities like it. So, and then we got the Chamber of Commerce's involved around Michigan and the Midwest, and it was all about economic development. It was, let's welcome immigrants for economic growth's sake. And we were successful. We created, Steve, I created Global Detroit. He was the first CEO, former state rep who knew how to work with community leadership groups. And now, over time, there are more immigrant welcoming communities and chambers of commerce and cities in Michigan and the Midwest than ever before because people get it led by the business community that this is economic development and growth. And so we're always trying to encourage people that the policies that we should animate are net contributors to job creation, new business creation for places like much of the Midwest that needs it and would welcome it. And so when we are looking at the policy agenda that we laid out in that article, it's really trying to get past this food fight between those who are saying immigrants are overrunning the country and are taking your job and are destroying our country. And on the other side, sort of those who, kind of put immigrants as sort of martyrs. They're being punished. They're being separated at the border. It's a moral duty to embrace them, the refugee. All of that is true. As the Statue of Liberty says, "Give us your poor, your tired, your huddled masses." That's what America is all about. It's also, morally a responsible and noble thing to do, very Christ-like. But we try to get past it and say, look, let's not either blame immigrants for all our woes or deify immigrants as martyrs being punished. Let's say, what do most people think would be common sense policies that they could support when it comes to an orderly and appropriate policy for letting people who are seeking freedom and bringing their talents to our country have the opportunity to realize that dream and then contribute to the American dream. So, yeah, there as there's several millions of people that have come here over the years that are here still without status. They're not here, on a temporary work permit, or it's expired, but they are here illegally without. And so, but meanwhile, 95% of them have been working, paying taxes, and putting in more to our society than they have taken out in the form of any social welfare benefits. And so, I think most people actually know many of these people because they're all around us. And there's a when you ask the public, do the folks that have been here demonstrating that they work hard, they pay taxes, they improve our society, do you think they should have a path to get citizenship status and be clear on what the steps that they need to take are? Most people agree with that. And so that's always been, probably the major idea Ronald Reagan supported. Let's create a path to citizen. While we try to improve the policies at the border that have the ways people who flee here and do try to cross our border are treated. At a minimum, let's start with the millions who have been here, who have been contributing to American society, who have been paying taxes. Let's help them have the proper status as citizens that they basically earned. So that's, sort of job one.
Sure. And I just wanted to interject that everything you say in the article is also based on the premise that we do somehow get hold of what's happening in a few places on our border where it does seem as though things have broken down, and that there needs to be some way of handling that. Although what we're really talking about now are the larger ways in which immigration per se needs to be more rational and more reasonable.
And so these other elements that we're laying out, all of them are specific policies that have broad support when you ask people that question, when you're not loading it with the suggestion that somehow immigrants are destroying our country. Do you want the kids of immigrants who were born here, who have similarly been going to school, getting educated, are now working and contributing? You want them to have the status of citizens, which is actually, I think, in our Constitution, people born here are citizens of this great country of ours. That's how many people became Americans, including the Irish and the Italians and lots of other people. And so people agree with that. Most people really support having, more immigrants who are demonstrably with skills, whether it's nurses or computer programmers or things that both our businesses and we need, and we know that they are contributing to kind of wealth creation and new job creation and business growth versus poor indigent that we're somehow paying for. So more high skill immigrants in areas where our employers are desperate for people. And it's not because, and we need to train more Americans with the skills to take all of those jobs, and that's got to go alongside of it. But, Canada and other countries have for years had a immigrant system that's based on, a lot of value and credit given for the high skill occupations that drive the society forward and create new jobs for other people. and most people agree with that. They also agree with the startup visa idea. If someone comes here with resources, wants to invest, open a business, put other people to work, that's, I mean, people are all wanked out about the Chinese, eating our economic lunch in recent years, Democrats and Republicans. Always one of the sources of greatest strength has been people fleeing countries that are oppressive and authoritarian, bringing their talents, starting businesses here, not back home, employing Americans who are already here. So a startup visa and more liberal policies, we have a little bit of that in place that allows people who want to start a business, who want to bring their talents and their resources to America and be an American. That's a healthy thing for our country and for other people already here. And that's
May I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, may I ask you a question at that point? All right, so a startup visa is going to be a special visa for someone who comes here basically ready to go,
right?
Ready to set up a business, ready to hire people, right? That these are the people, and there are many of them, there are millions of them actually, but that would be different from the path to citizenship, or is this sort of a first step for such people? And they too also have to,
The path for citizenship is folks who've been here, their working lives are 10 years, and they are demonstrably, and that's what the path needs to be laid out. If you've been demonstrably showing that you're working, paying taxes, what is the definition of earning your citizenship? And let's approve citizenship for folks who meet that definition already, as well as make it clear for people who are newly coming in. Here's the path. You do this for 5 or 10 years, you're earning your right to be a full citizen, which most people on earth want to be an American because there's so much advantages economically, but also freedom being historically the main one. Freedom from oppression, freedom from being told by the state how to think, what to read, what to do. And so a startup visa, is just if you're an entrepreneur from China or India or Canada, and you want to bring your talents and your person and become a U.S. citizen as you grow your business and put other people to work, that seems to be in our collective interest to embrace those people. That's actually what's powered our country over the years, is all those creators of industries, including in the new high-tech fields. 50% of the high-tech startups in America, are immigrant entrepreneurs. And so that's just been the source of America's innovative strength forever and ever, along with this other idea, international students. I mean, James Fallows, who some of you probably know, writes for The Atlantic over the years, student of economic and political issues. He went to Japan when Japan was on the rise to report for 10 years. He went to China when China's on the rise. And then when he came back a few years ago, he wrote an article as people, once were worried about Japan kind of being the economic giant and overtaking America, just as people have become worried about China being the economic giant that's going to, pass by America in our economy. He came back and said, relax. America will be the most creative, dynamic, growing, innovative economy on earth, with the one that creates the new thing, the new idea, the new technology, new business, as long as two things are true. Basically, liberal but clear immigration policies that lets people seeking a better life and bringing their talents here, and the greatest higher education system on earth. And that's a big reason people have always come here too, because we do have the most powerful higher education institution nexus on the planet, creates more new technologies, new ideas. I mean, everything in Silicon Valley, everything in Boston came out of that interplay of research universities and people discovering a new technique, a new process, a new drug, a new, platform for social media or Airbnb that changes the world. And the internet changed the world, and we invented it, So the international students, coming here and then staying here and getting a great education and putting that education to work as engineers or software designers or whatever it is, that's another broadly supported path where people are comfortable and happy to have students from the world coming here, learning here, taking advantage of these great talent generating institutions that are our higher education system, and then doing their thing here and going to work or working at a new business or starting their own business, as many have done. So international student embrace making it easier for them to stay, easier for them to go to work and extend their ability to be in this country, as well as then ultimately earn citizenship is another broadly supported path. And it's also been one of the historic ways America has not only attracted, but kept the best and the brightest on earth to be Americans and to make America even greater. I mean, that's a way to frame it that, hopefully would speak to others who have a destructive, not helpful recipe for America.
And it's interesting that conservatives also now want to knock down higher education. They're going after the colleges. So that's right. Another discussion for another time.
We'll be back to our podcast in just a moment. But first, here's a soothing musical interlude. In 2020, John C. Austin organized the Transforming Industrial Heartlands initiative involving not only U.S. interests, but also those in England, Germany, and the European Commission, looking at strategies to develop industrial regions here and abroad.
He's written many influential articles in such venues as Foreign Policy, the Brookings Institute, and the National Interest. His work focuses on the urgency of accelerating economic change in our heartland and across the world.
For more on John C. Austin's work, check out his Brookings page, brookings.edu/people/John, John, -C Austin, AUSTIN.
And now, let's get back to the musical Innertube, already in progress. What do we do about the asylum seekers? What do we do about all those that are gathered at the border that are running from oppression and violence in Central and South America, and have maybe dubious talents? Maybe their talents lie more in the laborer level, where they would do something of a physical nature as opposed to something where they would come up with their own business or something.
First, it's important to appreciate unlike the immigrant population is not like a normal bell-shaped curve in terms of education levels. It's actually a U, meaning relative to the population's already here. There are more higher skilled, highly educated immigrants on one side than there are in our own population in America, and they're also more unskilled. The laborers, the migrant farm workers. And so, but both of those are both needed and contribute. The high end, they're the ones that start new businesses and put other people to work or play key roles as the doctors and nurses and tech people in our society. There are lots of, the meat packers and the migrant farmers and the Salvadoran crew that is up on the roof for 14, 15 hours a day replacing roof. They're also doing jobs that for less pay than Americans will do them for, but that are needed here. So that employer, as the business community, as you know, has been one of the biggest backers of relatively open welcoming of immigrants at both ends of the continuum. And so, I think there's both an economic benefit from those who are, uneducated refugees from wherever they come from to come here. But there's also and that's where we need to very much rationalize and make effective our policy for how to welcome people who are legitimately fleeing from both political violence, persecution, and those who are, doing what immigrants have always done, come here because the low-paying job you can get here is still like the land of milk and honey compared to, Ethiopia or Syria, where there's both violence and deprivation, or parts of Africa and Latin and South America. So that's where one of our, the proposals that they're even, the Biden administration is trying to advocate for now is we just need way more hands on deck and resources to support our crew that processes these asylum seekers. Meaning lots more judges, lots more personnel, being able to expedite those cases, figure out if they're truly a refuge from political or other violence as asylum seekers, and determine quickly, not forever, and have them backed up and warehoused or paroled into society, which is where the Republicans face most of their criticism. If you're not if you're dealing with legitimate asylum seekers quickly, and or deciding those who aren't legitimate and that need to then follow a path, wait their turn, apply normally, and wait for the time take the steps that we need to better lay out. That's a big piece of what we need to do to make the traditional American welcoming of the refugee just work more efficiently, faster, and with more clarity on who gets what kind of treatment when they show up at the border. I of course still like to point out which part of the Lazarus poem on the Statue of Liberty don't you still believe in this country? Countries around the world have admired the U.S. as amazing as the place where people can seek and find freedom, and and immigrants, as you know, they want to go to work. They don't want looking for a handout. They go to work and they create jobs. And so we benefit if we can make it more efficient, effective, and easier for folks of all sorts. The refugee, as well as the high skilled person, find their way here because we all benefit. But I do say one of the things we need to do that is hard to do is we have to help partner with these countries, places like Central and South America. We're saying, let's help you grow your own economy. Let's co-produce electric vehicles, component parts coming from our country, Mexico, Canada, as one example, Salvador. So there are good paying jobs being created. And of course that requires political stability and lots of things that are hard to get to in those countries. But we need to have a very robust way of, we're going to support economic development in your geographies, so that folks aren't seeing rightfully that I got no hope, I got my family starving, and I got to get to America by hook or by crook. Again, that's one of the challenges that is, is hard to get at, but it's a big piece of the puzzle as well.
I mean, do we give subsidies to companies who agree to go to such countries and have factories? Do we do things like that?
Well, I think we need to work with our allies, and this is where we've been trying to promote ally shoring versus onshoring, meaning let's go with our allies to the African nations where we need to source critical minerals for our smartphones and our electric vehicles. Let's go to Latin and South America and Mexico and say, let's help you develop your energy infrastructure. Let's help you develop your transportation and smart secure border infrastructures. And we can co-produce, which is what we do, because there's lots of supply chains and component parts, and more with you in Mexico and Central and South America versus sourcing all this stuff from China, where they like to use the dependency to, keep us politically coerce their competitors, and they're very active in these developing countries, trying to make a development offer that's actually not very helpful to these developing countries because it encourages corruption. It relies on dependency on China for the loans that they employ Chinese workers. We can make a better offer. Let's help you grow your component part plants for batteries that we're going to need to put into our electric vehicles now that we're subsidizing them. And we do have that requirement in place. Domestic content in EVs extends to our friends and allies in Latin and South America, so that they're going to be growing more good paying jobs while we're growing our industry in America as well. So that's and it's happening now naturally, meaning many companies are pulling out of China because Xi has politicized things horribly, and even a lot of Chinese entrepreneurs are pulling out of China because they're being raided, their offices. They're being told you can't do business in China, if you don't conform to if you criticize us publicly. The Australians, learned this painfully. They cut trade relations. So, there's a lot of things we can do to kind of create incentive structures to produce more goods and services in conjunction with friends and neighbors near and far who want to share the same values of a kind of an open, rules-based free trade system. And that will, if we create more good jobs by making these things together here and in Central America and Mexico, which is beginning to happen, then we're going to see less pressure on our border if there are no good paying jobs being created in those countries south of the border in particular. I mean, look at Venezuela. Venezuela is a mess. And it's a mess because they've had a strong man who wrecked their economy by, trying to, it's basically an old Soviet model. We'll subsidize all the basics, and then there's no incentive to work, and the whole thing collapses. And now you see refugees. So we need a better model.
I wanted to make sure we got to a couple of the last things on your list. One of them is that we encourage in various ways communities that indicate that they would welcome immigrants. And I'd like to hear what shape would that take?
Yeah, and it's interesting. We're as of this year, we're trying to mimic in Flint, which is a poster child for a community that has lost population, has no tax base left, has been hit hard by these scandals of infrastructure. Develop a global Flint program, because it may be the only path left for Flint to grow, because guess what? Immigrants are still coming to Flint. It's the only source of population growth over the last decades. Have been a growing number of immigrants from Cuba and Venezuela and other places. So let's accelerate that. And so there are lots of communities like Flint who are realizing, look, if we're going to redevelop our housing stock and repopulate our city and create tax-paying businesses again, we need all the help we can get. Let's welcome immigrants. And they still want to come to places even like Flint that have such a degraded kind of physical plan for their community. There are lots of communities around the country that are like that. And it's not just the ones, the big cities that are, being sent these busloads from Texas and Florida. It's a lot of small and medium-sized, former factory or mill towns around the country, or small towns out in Iowa and others that have lost their population that would be, and Dayton and other communities have purposely made themselves, we want to be a city that redevelops and grows again by welcoming immigrants, welcoming refugees. So if you're one of those communities that wants to put their hand up and say, we want to grow our population and grow our economy again, and welcoming newcomers, refugees and immigrants is a way that we are seeing we want to do it because it works, then why don't those communities get some additional support? The feds or others, can provide some financial incentives or small business development supports or targeted in what immigrants need to get started that would be available to immigrant welcoming communities. If you had a suite of programs, whether it's housing dollars to rehabilitate housing or job training or small business support that help immigrant entrepreneurs, which has been a traditional way the communities that have organized the immigrant welcoming. Let's help those who can and want to start a business get what they need first, English language skills, and then the permits and navigate those systems. There's lots of things programmatically you could do, and you could focus those efforts, resources, spending at any level of government to support communities that want to grow and realize immigrants are a powerful way to grow population, grow their business, revitalize their community.
So why is it so difficult in Washington to fix this? Is it just the politics of terror that is keeping lawmakers from adopting any of this?
Well, I think that's what Steve and I are trying to contribute to with this article. We've had similar tough policy challenges that were sort of being demagogued to death, like healthcare for years. It's socialized medicine. We don't want it. Any form of kind of more universal healthcare. And what we're pointing out is the analogies to the immigration debate are eerily similar. Immigrants are overrunning the border. We don't want that. We got to stop all this. But when, just like with healthcare, people, as we just went through, there are a number of policies that would be constructive for economy or communities that people, if you just take each one in turn, broadly support. And so, just like with healthcare, if we can, it's right now the Biden administration is probably not positioned to do it. Maybe a new generation of leadership that could take this on could kind of force the issue. All right, here's our fix. Here's the family policies that we just like. Here's the fix for healthcare that we know is needed. Call the question, force the issue, force the votes. If you're in a position, are you going to vote against this package, which is going to stop the chaos at the border and put in place common immigration reform? If the politics move to where, either side or a bipartisan group, like with infrastructure, who'd have thought that an infrastructure bill could pass in this political environment, but there may be a way to put that package together of things that actually fix, not demagogue the issue. And then you have to force people to vote up or down, that you had to get to that point. And then once you get to that point, just like with healthcare, okay, you're going to vote to take away this thing, or you're going to vote against what people know is the number one issue, which it was a few years ago, healthcare.
That infrastructure bill passed in part because everybody got something. Everybody got a project in their home hundreds, right? Everybody got some money to fix that bridge, or at least to give to their local communities to fix what those communities wanted. I think it was a smart bill in that sense, that it let the money get distributed so that it could go to what needed fixing. And it remains a very popular bill because, well, drive around the country. You're seeing lots of building going on. Everybody got something. Selling immigration could do pretty much the same thing, but it's just we're not selling it like that. It's expensive also,
but it's also caught up in this othering, meaning looking for the scapegoat when you're anxious about your future, and it's easy to point to people of color as so it's caught up in the racial othering and scapegoating, which is a very it's hard to scapegoat a bridge or broadband as being a threat in some way, so it is tougher that way. But so part of everybody getting something out of it, also needs to be that you're those who want to show they're tough on immigration, tough on the border policy, get something that says, yeah, we this package of smart immigration reforms are tough on, the unbridled, overrunning of our country, which any good package would be. I mean, it would make that much more orderly, efficient, and clear. But it also then, it needs to give people who want to benefit by knowing that they're embracing the spirit that is animating this country and making America the economic powerhouse and juggernaut that has always been, also get something like, yes, we got and we've been through waves of this, as you noted. Look, early part of the 1900s, there was, pretty open immigrants. That's when all, the Poles and Italians and everybody came in here, and then they shut it down in the 1920s. And it was a very stagnant, slow trickle of immigrants until the 1960s, when unseen, but the big changes in immigration policy in the 60s, that allowed families and family reunification and stuff, that ended quotas, by country, that led to one of the greatest economic and expansions in our history, and changes in our country for the good, by letting in all this wonderful, diverse set of talents who powered us and keep powering us today. So, that's there are waves of this backlash, and then there's waves of when we do something commonsensical that's helpful, and sometimes that fix was never understood to be as powerful or as significant as it was when it was made in the 60s. And it proved out to be a positive game changer for America, because it, if anything, it enabled in part, sort of the ongoing migration of the talents that have powered, the creation of a new economy here.
Well, John C. Austin, it has been just a wonderful and wonderfully rich conversation with you today. I'm kind of thinking that we should have you back if an immigration bill gets agreed to, which seems unlikely, but if it actually happens, I'd love to have you back to talk about the way it strikes you. It's great to hear discussions that are positive about what can change, and I think that's what we got here today. So thanks for being on our show.
Thank you, John.
Good to be with you.
And thank you for listening to the Musical Innertube.
Hey, let us know how we're doing. Send us an email at musicalinnertube, all one word, @gmail.com.
Do you know someone with a great story to tell? Let us know. Send us an email or log in to our website, musicalinnertube.com, and click on the microphone in the lower right-hand corner to leave us a voicemail.
And while you're on our website, take a few minutes to listen to past episodes of the podcast. They're all there, along with pictures and biographies of our guests, blog posts, and lots more.
And as always, our thanks to virtual band Car Radio Dog for providing us with our theme music.